One thing, all things, spinning in the same groove, intertwined threads, every move proves. No borders, no fences, no dividing the lens. Breath of the cosmos, where it starts, where it ends. Perfect, nah, let the flaws just hum in the cracks of the world, that's where light comes. Chasing the real, ain't no mirage. The waves in the silence, not in the collage. No need to fight it, let it unwind. Step into the rhythm of a trusting mind. Oh, yes, today, oh, tomorrow, oh, today, the way don't speak, but it shows the way. No beginning, no finish, no lines to erase. Just trust, just flow, let it fall into place. Let it fall into words collapse like castles of sand. The truth in the gaps where the wordless stands. Dualities of mass, peeling layers off the face. Find the void and you'll find the grace. Tied to nothing, the weight drifts off, letting go of perfection. The chains unlock. Faith ain't a question, it's the essence of fear. When you lose the division, the path is clear. No yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. The way don't speak, but it shows the way. Beginning, no finish, no line to erase. Just trust, just flow, let it all into
Okay, welcome to Read Books for Money, Magic, Mystic, God. And the book House Reading House Concrete is here. We are listening to a little Magic Thelema music. Rubono Shallow Lam. I changed the title. I pinned a link to the YouTube Live. Thank you for being here yet again, Rubono Shallow Lam. The time is now. And you only have 2.5 billion seconds. So let's get started because time is a second.
2.5 billion.
I was thinking everybody's actually born a billionaire. It's just a question of how do they spend their 2.5 billion. That's my Steve Appel laugh. Boom. So we're gonna read some Kabbalah. Many people don't like Kabbalah because they think it's demonic.
I want you to tell me where, and I want you to tell me from when, please. So I can
But before we read the Kabbalah,
Allow me to speak, and then you can come in and
No, I want you to state the statements, bro. Tell me from where. Is it in Gaza, in Palestine, West Bank, and then from what year to when?
I'm gonna get the book.
Hey, my brother, if you don't want me to talk, just let me be.
Okay, now you sound like you're Chinese too, man, brother. I don't know why you talk. You sound Vietnamese, African. I don't understand what's going on here.
No, Bibi, you're not.
Wait, 355,000 were killed from what year? Was it 2023, 2022?
No, October 7th.
Okay. What channel? Okay, so you're a fucking idiot, bro. So it's documented in 72,000, buddy. Yeah, but hold on. Where did you get that from?
As I said, non-Jewish sources is 75,000. From Jewish sources is 75,000. From non-Jewish sources is estimated to be 355,000.
Okay, name it.
Ocean, hold on 1 second. First of all, it's a million, not 355 for non-Jewish sources. It's a million. Exactly 1 million. They stopped when they hit. So there was like a lottery number. So as soon as they hit a million, the Zionists stopped. Okay, so we hit exactly a million and we stopped. It's very wrong from the non-Jewish sources. But let's get Hamas. Are they Jewish or not Jewish? Hamas.
What has Hamas got to do with this conversation?
Are they Jewish or not Jewish?
Are these people like retarded? I'm embarrassed to be African.
I'm asking you, are they Jewish or not? Hamas.
Your line of questioning is sounding stupid now because I was given a submission and you're just asking
Are you gay?
the submission.
Are you gay?
No,
Just answer the question. I don't know if I'm going to talk to you. Are you gay?
Jewish
Hey,
or not?
one microphone, with all due respect, one microphone at a time. If you want to be talking, I'll just
I'm
let you.
asking you a question. Is Hamas
Yeah,
Jewish
so
or not?
act like same people. Act like respectable people. One microphone.
I'm
Yes.
gonna act like you. Like
So now, yes. So I'm actually listening to Rabbi. Why are you straight?
I can rub one on.
Next, one microphone. If you want to engage me, one microphone.
I'll rub it.
If I can speak with them guys, you just let me know because it's your room. I don't want to. Go ahead,
One microphone.
Let me finish speaking. Everybody, mute up. I'm asking you a question. Hamas, Palestinian source. Are they Jewish or non-Jewish? From your non-Jewish sources, do you consider them Jewish or non-Jewish?
Hamas is a resistance group. Palestinian resistance group.
Are they Jewish or
What has that got to do with Jewish or not?
Are you stupid or are you playing to be stupid?
Rafi, your verbosity does not mean you're sensible or you're making sense. Stop being stupid.
Okay, so I've got 4 books queued up. We're going to go to favorite number pages and read 3 to 10 minutes with each book, just 4 books. That's what we're doing in the book club today, kids. If you want to donate to this campaign, go to chicagomayoral.com. I want to thank you all for coming to the John Kitover nonprofit book club for kids that don't read good books no more and stuff like that. For kids that can't read books because they're too poor. And, we could go on about the R word, the F word, N word, the K word, or the Z word. All right, let's go to page 69 in The Wisdom of Insecurity by Alan Watts. A message for an age of anxiety. This is page 69. As a matter of fact, mental activities of this kind can now be done far more efficiently by machines than by men. So much so that in a not too distant future, the human brain may be an obsolete mechanism for logical calculation. Already the human computer is widely displaced by mechanical and electrical computers of far greater speed and efficiency. If then man's principal asset and value is his brain and his ability to calculate, he will become an unsaleable commodity in an era when the mechanical operation of reasoning can be done more effectively by machines. Subnote 1. I take my facts on this matter from Norbert Wiener's remarkable book, Cybernetics, New York and Paris, 1948. Dr. Wiener is one of the mathematicians chiefly responsible for the development of the more elaborate electrical computers. Having likewise an advanced knowledge of neurology, he is well able to judge the extent to which these inventions can reproduce the work of the human organism. His book contains the following pertinent observation. It is interesting to note that we may be facing one of those limitations of nature, in which highly specialized organs reach a level of declining efficiency and ultimately lead to the extinction of the species. The human brain may be as far along on its road to this destructive specialization as the great nose horns of the last of the Titanotheres. Already man uses innumerable gadgets to displace the work done by bodily organs in the animals, and it would surely be in line with this tendency to externalize the reasoning functions of the brain and thus hand over the government of life to electromagnetic monsters. In other words, the interests and goals of rationality are not those of man as a whole organism. If we are to continue to live for the future and to make the chief work of the mind prediction and calculation, man must eventually become a parasitic appendage to a mass of clockwork. There is indeed a viewpoint from which this rationalization of life is not rational. The brain is clever enough to see the vicious circle which it has made for itself, but it can do nothing about it. Seeing that it is unreasonable to worry does not stop worrying. Rather, you worry the more at being unreasonable. It is unreasonable to wage a modern war in which everybody loses. Neither side actually wants a war. And yet, because we live in a vicious circle, we start the war to prevent the other side from starting first. We arm ourselves knowing that if we do not, the other side will, which is quite true. Because if we do not arm the other side, we'll do so to gain its advantage without actually fighting. From this rational point of view, we find ourselves in the dilemma of St. Paul. To will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. For the good that I would, I do not. But this is not as St. Paul supposed. Because the will, or the spirit, is reasonable, and the flesh perverse. It is because a house divided against itself cannot stand. The whole organism is perverse, because the brain is split from the belly, and the head unconscious of its union with the tail. There are few grounds for hoping that in any immediate future there will be any recovery of social sanity. It would seem that the vicious circle must become yet more intolerable, more blatantly and desperately circular, before any large numbers of human beings awaken to the tragic trick which they are playing on themselves. But for those who see clearly that it is a circle and why it is a circle, there is no alternative but to stop circling. For as soon as you see the whole circle, the illusion that the head is separate from the tail disappears. And then, when experience stops oscillating and writhing, it can again become sensitive to the wisdom of the body, to the hidden depths of its substance. Because I speak of the wisdom of the body and of the necessity for recognizing that we are material, this is not to be taken as a philosophy of materialism in the accepted sense. I am not asserting that the ultimate reality is matter. Matter is a word, a noise which refers to the forms and patterns taken by a process. We do not know what this process is, because it is not a what that is a thing definable by some fixed concept or measure. If we want to keep the old language, still using such terms as spiritual and material, the spiritual must mean the indefinable, that which, because it is living, must ever escape the framework of any fixed form. Matter is spirit named. After all this, the brain deserves a word for itself, for the brain, including its reasoning and calculating centers, is a part and product of the body. It is as natural as the heart and stomach, and rightly used is anything but an enemy of man. But to be used rightly, it must be put in its place. For the brain is made for man, not man for his brain. In other words, the function of the brain is to serve the present and the real, not to send man chasing wildly after the phantom of the future. Furthermore, in our habitual state of mental tension, the brain does not work properly, and this is one reason why its abstractions seem to have so great a reality. When the heart is out of order, we are clearly conscious of its beating. It becomes a distraction. Pounding within the breast, it seems most probable that our preoccupation with thinking and planning, together with the sense of mental fatigue, is a sign of some disorder in the brain. The brain should, and in some cases does, calculate and reason with the unconscious ease of the other bodily organs. After all, the brain is not a muscle, and is thus not designated for effort and strain. But when people try to think or concentrate, they behave as if they were trying to push their brains around. They screw up their faces, knit their brows, and approach mental problems as if they were trying to push their brains around, as if they were something like heaving bricks. Yet, you do not have to grind and strain to digest food, and still less to see, hear, and receive other neural impressions. The lightning calculator, who can sum a long column of figures at a glance. The intellectual genius, who can comprehend a whole page of reading in a few seconds. And the musical prodigy, such as Mozart, who seems to grasp harmony and counterpoint from babyhood are examples of the proper use of man's most marvelous instrument. Those of us who are not geniuses know something of the same ability. Take, for example, the anagram Pokateldimk. You can work over these letters for hours trying system after system of rearrangement in order to discover the scrambled word. Try instead just looking at the anagram with a relaxed mind. And in a very short space of time, your brain will deliver the answer without the slightest effort. In order to discover the scrambled. Subnote 1, if you don't succeed within 1 minute, read on. Otherwise, you will begin to be annoyed either with yourself or with me. And the consequent strain will interfere with the process. We rightly mistrust the snap answers of strained and wandering minds, but the rapid, effortless, and almost unconscious solution of logical problems is what the brain is supposed to deliver. Working rightly, the brain is the highest form of instinctual wisdom. Thus it should work like the homing instinct of pigeons and the formation of the fetus in the womb, without verbalizing the process or knowing how it does it. The self-conscious brain, like the self-conscious heart, is a disorder and manifests itself in the acute feeling of separation between I and my experience. The brain can only assume its proper behavior when consciousness is doing what it is designed for, not writhing and whirling to get out of present experience, but being effortlessly aware of it. Okay, this is the John Kitover Chicago Book Club Poetry and Meditation Session. Rabono Shalom. Hit that like button, share, and subscribe. You're live on YouTube right now, Rabono Shalom. That was a reading from Alan Watts, page 69. From The Wisdom of Insecurity. Some brains want to read books out loud on YouTube. Some brains want to talk in private, unrecorded spaces all day long. Hello?
Should we read the Kabbalah?
The Holy Kabbalah.
Tradition of Hidden Knowledge by Seth Ben Shimon.
Ribono Shel Olam?
So the preface for this is Kabbalah is the inner and mystical aspect of Judaism. It is the perennial teaching about the attributes of the divine, the nature of the universe, and the destiny of man in Judaic terms. Imparted by revelation, it has been handed down over the centuries by a discrete tradition that has periodically changed the mythological and metaphysical format to meet the spiritual and cultural needs of different places and epochs. This long and broadly spread history has given Kabbalah a remarkably rich and wide variety of images of reality, which appear to the unversed eye as strange, obscure, and even at times contradictory or corrupt. Therefore, in this presentation, one particular Kabbalistic system is used to unify and clarify a kaleidoscope of diverse views and practices drawn from ancient and modern sources. Finally, it must be stated, in concordance with the strict Kabbalistic rule, that the exposition represents one man's comprehension of a living tradition as it exists in the world of today.
Okay, this is page 69 from Kabbalah, The Mystic Quest for Every Jew in Judaism by David Ariel. The Mystic Quest, page 69. Some people say start at 1, I say start at 69. Here we go. The portion of the Zohar known as Ra'aya Mehemna, Faithful Shepherd, contains many selections that reflect the instrumentalist theory. In one such section, God is described as acting without being known because he acts through the instrumentality of the Sephirot. Like an overflowing ocean, the infinite, called here the first Sephirah, emanates the next two Sephirot, described as a channel and a basin to contain the vast ocean waters. Woe to one who compares the infinite to any of the human characteristics or even to one of his own attributes, or the more so to one who compares him to humans who are born and die. God may be characterized according to his governance upon a particular attribute, see one of the Sephirot, or even upon all the created beings. When he disappears above and beyond that attribute, he cannot be said to have that attribute, be characteristic or form. God is like the ocean, for the waters of the ocean cannot be grasped and have no shape except when they are channeled into a vessel, such as the land, and take on a shape. Then we are able to measure them. The source, the waters of the ocean are one. Then a tributary comes forth and is channeled into a round basin. The source is one, and the channel which comes from it is two. Next, a large vessel is formed, as if one dug a large basin, which becomes filled by the waters of the channel. This becomes three. Now, if the artificer would break these vessels which he created, the waters would return to the source, and only broken vessels would remain, dry and without water. Likewise, the cause of causes made 10 Sephirot, calling the crown source. There is no end to the fullness of the source's light, and therefore he called himself the infinite. Everything is within his power to withhold from the vessels or to replenish them with fullness. And withhold according to his will. There is no other God above him who can add to him or diminish him. Moshe Cordovero, a leading Kabbalist, proposed that one can even visualize the Sephirot as vessels in several ways. First, the divine essence flows through the Sephirot as water flows through vessels of different colors. Second, the infinite essence is like the sun when it shines through a prism. The change or stained glass window, neither the water nor the sunlight changes except in the eyes of the beholder. To help you conceive this, imagine water flowing through vessels of different colors: white, red, green, and so forth. As the water spreads through those vessels, although the water is devoid of all color, it appears to change into the colors of the vessels. Although the water is devoid of all color, the change in color does not affect the water itself, just our perception of the water. So it is with the Sephirot. They are vessels known, for example, as Hesed, Gevura, Tiferet, each colored according to its function, white, red, and green, respectively, while the light of the emanator, the essence, is the water having no color at all. This essence does not change. It only appears to change as it flows through the vessels. Better yet, imagine a ray of sunlight shining through a stained glass window of 10 different colors. The sunlight possesses no color at all, but appears to change hue as it passes through the different colors of glass. Colored light radiates through the window. The light is not essentially changed, though so it seems to the viewer. Just so with the Sephirot. The light that clothes itself in the vessels of the Sephirot is the essence, like the ray of sunlight. That essence does not change color at all, neither judgment nor compassion, neither right nor left. Yet by emanating through the Sephirot, the variegated stained glass, the judgment or compassion prevails. The first three Sephirot are described as follows. The infinite is described as being indistinguishable from the first vessel. His first Sephirah, an infinite and undifferentiated expanse, is the source of everything else. Then the essence of the infinite is channeled into a tributary that gives the first definition to the boundless expanse. This tributary is the second Sephirah. Next, the channel empties into a basin that is defined by the contours of the land around it. The basin is the third Sephirah, and the land around it constitutes the other Sephirot. This analogy suggests that the Sephirot are vessels, or channels that limit the infinite and give finite definition to everything else. The description is also reminiscent of the creation narrative in Genesis and suggests a parallel between the creation of the Sephirot and the creation of the world. The instrumentalist conception of the infinite is profoundly impersonal. The infinite is thoroughly removed from everything and never reveals itself. All the descriptions that are usually associated with the personal concept of God is the being who reveals himself, cares about man, and answers his prayers are relegated to the Sephirot. In order to consider the infinite as God, the mystic must be willing to engage in an unusual degree of remoteness and abstraction. The doctrine of the Sephirot as the essence of God is an attempt to preserve the concept of a personal God. It does, however, imply that God's essence changes according to the differences among each of the Sephirot. Kabbalists of this persuasion believed that it was more important to preserve the notion of a personal God than it was to preserve the unity of God. These Kabbalists describe the relation of the infinite to the Sephirot by an analogy to a candle. Many candles can be lit from one candle without ever changing the nature of the first candle. Therefore, one unique essence can be the source of many other essences without undergoing any essential change. The essentialists also believed that the descriptions and attributes that appear in the Bible refer to the Sephirot and not to the infinite. Unlike the instrumentalists, however, they claim that God is portrayed in the Bible since the Sephirot are God's essence. Thus, they are able to preserve the personal concept of God while referring all of the anthropomorphisms and poepathisms to the Sephirot, not the infinite. The difference between the infinite and the Sephirot is one of degree. The infinite emanates the Sephirot like a powerful transmitter that broadcasts signals through space. They call this process absolute emanation. The Sephirot are the broadcast signals, which do not differ essentially from the original transmission no matter how far they travel. The Sephirot are the same as the infinite, but the distance from the source produces a slightly different impression depending upon the reception. Therefore, the only difference between the infinite and the Sephirot is according to the reception, that is, according to which particular Sephirah receives the emanation. God is the infinite, but sometimes he is perceived through one Sephirah, whereas at other times he is perceived through another. God never changes. Only our perception changes. The changes in our perception or reception correspond to the different Sephirot. In the essentialist scheme, each Sephirah differs from the other according to its distance from the infinite. There are altogether 10 Sephirot, and each one emanates from the infinite. The first is more sublime and more pure than the 10th, but each one contains the essence of the infinite. Each one reflects another aspect of God's nature or essence. When it appears that God acts in different ways, it is really a different Sephirah acting. If, as the essentialists maintain, the Sephirot are just different aspects of one infinite essence, the personal aspect of God is preserved through the unity of God and is somewhat compromised. On the other hand, the instrumentalists preserve the integrity of the divine unity while sacrificing the personal aspect of God. While neither theory is able to preserve both divine personality and unity, the two schools of thought flourished side by side according to the predilections and theological inclinations of the Kabbalists. The Kabbatists. The term Sephirot first appears in one ancient text, Sefer Yetzirah, and later in a medieval text, Sefer HaBahir. These texts, however, do not employ the term in the same sense that it came to mean in Kabbalah. The earliest Kabbalistic treatises in Gerona, particularly the writings of Azriel, described the Sephirot in ways that came to be accepted among all subsequent Kabbalistic writers. The Gerona Kabbalists also codified the names of the individual Sephirot, although some variations in the exact names persisted. The Kabbalists, following the definition found in Sefer Yetzirah, taught that there are 10 Sephirot. It was left to the Gerona Kabbalists, the disciples of Isaac the Blind, to identify the Sephirot by name. 6 of the names were derived from the biblical verse, "Yours, Lord, are greatness, Gedula, might, Gavura, splendor, Tiferet, triumph, Netzah, and majesty, Chod. To you, Lord, belong kingship, Mamlacha." Each of these terms was understood as an attribute of God that the Kabbalists included in the list of 10 Sephirot. To these 6, they added 3 others to represent the idea that God is pure mind. These 3, Keter, crown, Chokmah, wisdom, and Binah, understanding, were placed at the top of the list. 9th, Yesod, foundation, was inserted, and the Decad was complete. Keter, crown, is the first Sephirah emanated from the infinite. It is the highest and most glorious of the Sephirot, and crowns them all. It stands as the barrier between the infinite and the other Sephirot, and so encircles the crowns the infinite. Because each Sephirah is emanated from another, the highest one, Keter, stands hierarchically above them all. Keter is the archetype of God as king. It is Keter who calls himself, "I am that I am," in Torah. Sometimes Keter is identified with the infinite. Most often, however, Keter is the first Sefer radiated or emanated by the infinite, which stands above it. Those who identify Keter with the infinite lean toward the essential view and believe that the Sephirot are only different stages in the unfolding of God's infinite essence. Those who believe that Keter is the first Sephirah and is not identical with the infinite generally follow the view that the infinite acts through vessels. The Sephirot and their God in his vessels are not similar. Therefore, the essentialists favor the personalist notion of God and therefore theorize that Keter is the same as the infinite. The instrumentalists believe that God is impersonal and the infinite is above Keter. There are many other names for Keter in Kabbalah. It is often called Ayin, nothingness, because it is beyond all existence, yet is the cause of all existing things. In the prayer of Nehunya ben Hakana, written in the 13th century, a hymn to Keter appears. Everything is in it, for the internal powers of the Sephirot are in it. The vitality and existence of everything stem from it. It is analogous to the soul. It gives life to the body and constitutes it. The constitution of everything is in Keter. There is no front or back, right or left. In this Sephirah, it is called indifferent unity. It is also called Hokmah Penimit, internal wisdom. Hokmah Penimut or Penimit, internal wisdom, because it is the hidden potentiality of divine wisdom before it is revealed. It is sometimes called Mashava Elohit, divine thought, because it is produced by the infinite. Pure mind. Keter is similar to the infinite in many of these respects, but different in others. It differs in that it is the highest aspect of God that moves into activity out of the repose of the infinite. Both infinite and Keter are unknowable and imperceptible. Okay, I'm going to take a reading break there. We finished on page 73. That is Kabbalah, the Mystic Quest in Judaism by David Ariel.
Now we have Kabbalah, the tradition of hidden knowledge. The first chapter is called Manifestation. God is God. There's no thing to compare with God. God is God. In Kabbalah, God the transcendent is called Ayin. Ayin means in Hebrew, no thing, for God is beyond existence. Ayin is neither below nor above, nor it is in movement or in stillness. There is nowhere Ayin is. God is absolute nothing. Ayin Sof means without end. This is the title of God, who is everywhere. Ayin Sof is the 1 to the 0 of Ayin. This is the totality of what is and is not. Ayin Sof is God the eminent, the absolute all. Ayin Sof has no attributes because it can manifest only within existence, and existence is finite. The oral tradition of Kabbalah states that the reason for existence is that God wished to